watching The Swingmen, presented by the 94 Feet Report.
Hi and welcome to The Swingmen. I am your temporary host, Alex West, and today I'm joined by some of the finest minds around NBA Twitter. My guests today, we're going to discuss the draft lottery, we're going to discuss the conference finals ongoing, and we're going to discuss everything that has to do with the NBA. So it's time to meet the team. We'll start with an old standby, Josh Cornelissen. Josh, how are you, sir?
Alex, I am doing awesome. And to prove that, I'm going to share with Total Recall my lunch from today. So first, I took – I'm just kidding.
Also joined by the host of the 94 Feet podcast, as well as our social media director, Mr. Corban Ford. Corban, how are you doing, man?
It's been a devastating couple of days, to be honest. I feel like the walking angry Arthur meme. And I will hit another old person if they go, LeBron James didn't win yet? No, not doing too good. But, you know, we're here.
And for those of you who are wondering, Corban is the reason that we're on at 10:35 instead of 10:30. So thank you, Corban. Always.
All right.
Next, we have two newcomers to the show. Joining us from Hoops Habit, Mr. Connor Harr. Connor, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, Alex. I'm excited to be on. Playoffs a little new territory for me, but I'm also excited to talk about the lottery.
We're always excited to have you. And new writer to the 94 Feet Report and local. I don't even know how to introduce you, Mr. TJ Burns. TJ, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Corban, I think you and I would get on very well. And the end of my intro.
All right. So we're going to get started. We're going to talk about the NBA draft lottery to get started with. And the draft lottery happened Tuesday night. It was not a great show, and Josh touched on that for a piece he wrote for the 94 Feet Report. And that's as good a place as any to start with the production itself. Josh, I know you had a lot of feelings about how the segment was produced, the fact that it lasted an entire hour, seemingly unnecessary. So let's kick it off there before we actually dive into the nuts and bolts.
I think that's great, Alex. But before I finish this sentence, let's go to a quick commercial break, because that's what happened the entire freaking draft lottery, right? Like, they revealed picks 14 through 10, and then we had to take a break. Like, there was some sort of tension once we found out that the Boston Celtics weren't going to jump up into the top three. It's like, oh, we need time to process that, which I should say the best part of the draft lottery show was that shared desk, making Philly and Boston, their representatives, sit right next to each other, just days after their playoff series. That was high theater. That was well done. And whoever came up with that idea should have been producing the show, because there is no reason that, 3 minutes worth of selection reveal needed to take an hour. I think it was cool that they brought in Adam Silver. That made sense, talking about the lottery reform, the one and done rule, being able to respond to Condoleezza Rice's statement recently. I think that was a good move. And I think that if you add that in, introduce everybody, share the odds about 14 times, and then give the results, that's a nice 30-minute show. But why it had to be an hour, I don't know. And when anything makes the NCAA selection show seem like a breeze, you've done something wrong, and that's exactly what the NBA did. So whoever was running that thing really fell flat in their face.
Yeah, it was kind of an abject disaster. Whatever was going on with Bobby Marks, when they sent it back to him, it seemed like he had found out about 8 seconds beforehand he had to be on TV. And it was a little bit of a disaster for a big network to have to do a show like that. However, we did find out the draft lottery, and a little bit of a change from what we thought. The top, we'll talk about the top 5, top 6, whatever. Phoenix ended up with the top pick, and then that's about where they started. Sacramento jumped up quite a few spots, and they finished with the 2nd pick. And then Atlanta, Memphis, Dallas, and Orlando. Now, Connor, you're our draft guy, so I'm going to go with you and talk to you about this one. But how do you feel like this? Obviously, the higher picks are going to be more fortunate when it comes to landing those great players. But how do you feel like each team sort of fared when it came to the draft lottery?
I thought for the most part there really weren't any giant surprises. I think Memphis kind of hurt themselves. Not that anything they could have done about it, but I think they really want Marvin Bagley to be that guy that fits in well with Gasol and Conley. And now they're at the point where Atlanta could draft him, so they're kind of missing out on it.
I think that a lot of the I guess the posturing that's going to go on for the next month is going to be a really interesting part. We had an article that came out today where Luka Doncic said he was not sure if he was going to continue to play with Real Madrid next season or if he was going to come over and play in the United States. And a lot of people think that might be jockeying. What is the consensus opinion amongst the group about Luka Doncic sort of levying his power against maybe not playing for the Sacramento Kings? And, maybe that's not the worst decision, but it certainly seems like he's wielding a little bit more power than traditional draft picks have.
I mean, I for one believe if you have the power to avoid playing in Sacramento at this point in time, and you Luka Doncic, you go and take that opportunity. You know what I mean? Anything. Hey, I may be reconsidering my options. I'm play out the rest of my contract, whatever the case may be. If you don't play in Sacramento, I think he will report. Ultimately, I don't think it's that big an issue. Just kind of agent talk and sticking to the company line, in my own personal opinion. But I mean, if he doesn't see himself having a great opportunity there, why not put the word out that, hey, I may be reconsidering. Hey, this might not be the time. Just to get executives thinking a little bit, and maybe they freak out and give him a chance to make a more favorable, I don't want to say a more favorable decision for him, but in a more favorable situation for him.
Corban, do you think that that's directly to avoid playing in Sacramento? I mean, do you think that that's what he's doing here?
I mean, I can't see him doing all that to avoid Phoenix if that's an opportunity with his former coach there and an offense and environment right now where he has definitely the potential to be featured. So I think more or less it is Sacramento. A glut of front court opportunities, maybe not the talent he sees not as wide open, a coach that he's not familiar with. I think it's more of a power play in that direction.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Our friend Patrick Oxford and our resident draft expert Patrick Oxford is no friend of the Sacramento Kings. Needless to say, he will not be hired there anytime soon, but he stays sort of down on the decisions that Sacramento makes, and maybe that's a consensus opinion around the league. TJ, what do you think about the ability of a player sort of to control his own destiny this early in the game?
Well, look, I think, decisions like this affect your entire life, and you should be able to make the decisions you need to make as early as possible because you don't want to be wrong. As far as me, if I would probably pretend I was joining ISIS before I got drafted by the Sacramento Kings.
Okay.
I was joining ISIS. I'd rather play for the Browns. There's, and that's the thing about this unique about the NBA is that you can kind of throw out these smoke screens that you aren't able to in other leagues.
A lot more player power.
For who got drafted ultimately by the Jets, it was rumored to throw out some things almost negative about himself to kind of rig the NFL draft, and then the Browns fell in love with Mayfield. We know an individual player has more impact in the NBA rather than NFL, but based on my conclusion is I'd rather be in ISIS than join the Kings.
Well, I don't necessarily think that that's the worst thing. De'Aaron Fox has obviously been enthusiastic as a member of the Kings. Josh, where do you go from here? If you're Sacramento, do you let this kind of power play sort of play itself out? Do you look to draft a Marvin Bagley, a Jaren Jackson? Maybe do you hope that DeAndre Ayton falls? What's your strategy if you're Sacramento, and how does this affect you from day one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think if you're looking at from Luka Doncic, is it Doncic?
Doncic,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, a white American. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I think it makes sense for him to make the play to try to, exert some pressure and to use what leverage he has. But I don't think Sacramento needs to care one iota. Because look, what is let's say they draft him. What's he going to do? He not come over in the first year? Okay. Then he comes over in the second year. He's still on a rookie sales contract. They've still got restricted rights in a few years. It doesn't change anything. He would have to stay overseas for 3 whole seasons And is he really going to do that and give up all the money he would get here in the States? And remember, the longer he does that, the longer that Sacramento can keep him because they'll retain his restricted rights. And it just pushes the amount of money that he can make further into the future. And he's not going to get any younger. If he believes that he will be the level of player that everyone thinks he will be, he needs to come to the NBA right away so he can gather up that time served quickly and get those big max contracts. And guarantee across the league that if you're a young superstar, you can force your way somewhere else if you're truly not happy. But you can only do that if you're here in the NBA. So I think that Sacramento should just draft him if they think he's the right guy, and if Ayton or Bagley goes at number 1. They take Doncic, and then they worry about it later. Like, nice. I think they have real connections that, as much as everybody's talking about Kokoskov over in Phoenix having the connection because he was the national coach, look, Slovenia and Serbia were like the same country 20 years ago, and Vlad Divac has a connection there. They've shared cultural heritage there as well, and I think Sacramento can lean on that just as much as Phoenix can lean on it. And so I don't think that Doncic necessarily is angling to not go to Sacramento, and I think that if he is, that Sacramento should just call the bluff.
It presents an interesting question, and I think, Connor, you're going to be the guy to have to address this one. Phoenix sitting there at number 1. They hired Igor Koshkov, again, white American. Igor Koshkov. No, you know what? No, it's over. They hired a player that had a coach that had worked with Doncic in a lot of capacities, and a lot of people thought that was a signal that they were going to draft Doncic. A lot of people believe that Ayton is the best player in the draft. Connor, if you're sitting there at Phoenix and you're number 1, which way do you go with this thing? Do you take the player who's performed so well playing in Europe, or do you take the electric 7-footer who seems to have no upward ceiling as an offensive player, and then obviously with defensive concerns for both?
Yeah, Alex, thank you for trying to pronounce that name, because there's no way I was going to be able to pronounce it, man. It just would have been all bad. But anyways, I think I like Doncic as the better overall prospect. I think for Phoenix, he fits in better as well. I think pairing him next to Devin Booker and Josh Jackson, having 2 6'8", 6'6", 6'8" guys that can play, that can dribble, handle. Josh Jackson, not as much shoot, but the other 2 shoot. I think will be really valuable. Ayton, there's definitely an argument you can make for Ayton, but I'm worried that with how bad the team is defensively already, having a big man who's really going to try to anchor your defense with rim protection concerns and just overall defensive IQ concerns not really working out.
I've gotten a production note here from our production team who told me that is Kokoshkov. Did I hit that one, production team? All right, Josh says that's how you pronounce it. I think that there are a lot of interesting questions that Phoenix has to sort of struggle over the next couple of weeks. Now, is this a trade-down draft? Last season, we saw the Celtics take the number 1 pick in the draft lottery. They traded down. They said their guy, and seemingly Jason Tatum was their guy at number 3, and they managed to pick up an asset. Is this a trade-down draft, or is this a stand-pat draft?
For me, I think it's just a stand pat. I don't know that really the Suns have the talent overall on their team to be wanting to trade down. I think if they have a player in Doncic or Ayton, that they should take him. The Celtics, they were in a different position where they had a little bit more talent and they had more stuff to work with that the Suns really don't. Aside from really Devin Booker and maybe depending on how you feel about Bender and Josh Jackson, I think the rest of that team is really pretty much expendable in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting just to see their approach from here. Now, quick lightning round on this one. I'm gonna ask everybody. And Josh, I'll start with you on this one. Who's your number 1 guy? If you're sitting there, not necessarily with Phoenix, but just if you've got the number 1 pick, who do you feel safest with in this draft?
I think it's got to be Luka Doncic. I just think that centers are valuable, and Ayton looks great. Bagley looks awesome, whether he's a 4 or a 5, but I think it's more valuable to have a guy on the wing. And so I think that kind of breaks any sort of tiebreaker that might be for me.
All right, TJ, what about you, man? Who's your 1 guy you feel safest about in this draft? TJ left. He was gone. That's enough show for him. Corban, I'll go to you while we get TJ back. Who's your number one guy?
I'm sorry.
He just quit the
He dropped like it was hot right there. Woo! Anyway,
no more show.
I'm actually gonna go with 8, and I just feel there's a lot of variability in Luka Doncic's game. He can be really good, and as Josh just mentioned, having a wing player in this current NBA is very valuable. But with the traits that DeAndre Ayton lends or has, I think he can lend to Phoenix in a better way. They have a glut of underwhelming, underperforming bigs. And I think if Phoenix focuses more on a point guard, and you already have Devin Booker as a shooter and Josh Jackson there, and you can't forget TJ Warren, and you really shore up that center spot, I mean, wings could open up. We never know what the trade market will bring and how the offseason will work itself out. I like Luka Doncic. I'm not saying that I don't, but I think the risk-reward factor is a lot larger with him. We're 8, and I kind of feel I know what I'm going to get, and maybe his ceiling may not be as high as people are expecting or hoping, but I think a very solid player. And not a lot to worry about.
Let me ask you this, Corban. You sort of in that right around in that area, University of Arizona area, Phoenix area.
Yep.
How much has that sort of factored into the way you think about DeAndre Ayton? Because a lot of people are a little bit down on him, but I know locally people are really up on him.
Yeah, locally people are, not only because, I mean, I still go to school, not only because people see him and know who he is, but, oh, that guy from Europe. Every time you bring up Doncic to someone who thinks they know basketball around the University of Arizona, they immediately bring up Darko Milicic, like immediately. All I got to say, oh, you know, Luka, no, it's Darko again. Like, that's not only just shows how little you've looked at and prepared, you know, as far as the amazing draft guide that the 94 Feet Report has. It's really good if you guys haven't noticed. But also, you know, there's just this sense of, oh, Europe, oh my God, they're good over there, and they come over here and they get swallowed up, and that's not exactly true. Whereas Ayton is a known, you know, hometown hero. He's a proven product, and it would make, you know, a good story for most of the, you know, immediate public here that aren't as well versed in, I don't know, NBA scouting and what's really going on.
All right, Connor, I'm going to throw this back to you while we're still working on getting TJ back. We had a question come from YouTube from the Knowledge Seeker, and he said, do you think the Suns might trade up from 16? They have the 16th pick, and then they have a Milwaukee pick. They have the 16th pick, which is Milwaukee, and then they have the pick at 31 as well. Connor, do you think that that's a tradable asset? How do you think that they approach these multiple first-round picks?
I'm not really too sure where you're trading them in at and who you want to trade them with. Ultimately, I think that they should just keep the pick because at 16, you still have plenty of viable options, whether you want to go Ayton as big and then pair him with a wing, if like a Lonnie Walker's still there or Troy Brown's still there. Even though I'm not nearly as high on Troy Brown as others, it's probably a very viable option for them. And just the 31 too. I mean, there's still a lot of names out there. If you don't think that, if you do take Ayton, like I said, and you want somebody that's a more ball dominant point guard, a Kobo might be in that range. Few other guys like. I'm
a big Landry Shamet guy in that spot. I think he'd fit with Phoenix really well.
Yeah, Landry Shamet as well. I do remember you saying that too. And even like maybe if a Brunson's there, just somebody else, if they don't feel completely confident in just having Devin Booker shoulder that huge load if they do take Ayton. And even if they don't, there's still plenty. There's just a plethora of wings out there if they do end up taking Doncic or another point guard to back up Doncic.
I think those are good choices. You know, this is going to be one of those interesting drafts where you're going to get the definition for a lot of teams coming into the future. Phoenix obviously has a big choice, but even as you go further down the line, you have other teams that have to make a lot of decisions with Orlando, with Atlanta. I heard, listen to Adrian Wojnarowski today that they believe that Atlanta's guy's Marvin Bagley. And so for this draft, there's going to be a lot of different shapings of franchises. And I think that that's going to be a really big deal as we go into the future because it looks like the 2019 class may be a little bit down from what we have this year. And this is a pretty talented class. It feels like there are 6, 7, 8 guys who can be high-level contributors. What do you think about this class and how the next class, like dipping down below this one, will affect the way teams sort of approach this draft?
Well, you're absolutely right that the 2019 class is extremely down. I mean, you're talking about Duke's big three, maybe Nasir Little. Obviously, there's always going to be another guy coming out somewhere out of nowhere, maybe a freshman that was rated lower or a freshman from this year that had a great season. But I think it's going to cause a lot of teams to, depending on how they want to feel it, to be more cautious with their picks. Because next year, I mean, you could get a good player around the 30 range in this draft if you get a good fit, obviously. But next year, I mean, after 10 to 12 right now, I really am not sure how deep it is at all, even past the end of the lottery.
All right, Connor, appreciate your expertise on the NBA draft. Now, there are two conference finals going on. The draft lottery was only part of what happened Tuesday. The first thing that the second thing that happened on that day was game number 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm not wearing my shirt today. I'm hosting. I'm not allowed to pick sides. If I were, I might be excited and I might be enjoying that the Celtics are up 2-0, but I'm impartial. I'm part of the media. Quick thing, I just want to go to Corban. Corban had said last week that he may have said he would eat a shoe or something. I can't remember what he said he was going to do. But he made some grandiose claims if the Cavaliers were down 2-0. So let's go live to Corban and see what he has to say.
I don't have the footage of what I said. I do know that I regret it. I was shocked. I was angry. I went through the 7 stages of grief. I went back and felt them again. I was literally cursing out J.R. Smith. I mean, literally, just the backcourt. Just starting on the Cavs backcourt. 2 games so far. J.R. Smith is 2 for 17 from the field. 2 for 17. Your starting shooting guard. 0 for 7 from 3. Hasn't even sniffed one. I mean, one that he could make. Okay, George Hill has recorded no assists in 28 minutes in game 1. Then he comes back and really rebounds with 3 points in game 2. That's just wow. And the 2 so far have been totally outscored 72-12 by Jalen Rose and scary Terry Rozier. I don't really know how you even respond to that. It's just it's crazy. I'm willing to make a really super huge throw it out there trying to defend the Cavs statement here. Is this the worst supporting cast LeBron has had in the past decade? What do y'all think about that? I'm gonna throw it back to y'all real quick.
TJ, go ahead, give it to us, man.
So, Bugs Bunny had a worse cast. So, I really think this might be the worst cast LeBron has had since the 07 finals. I mean, when you go down the list, who is the 3rd best player on the Cavaliers? You stop at maybe George Hill, and when George Hill is your 3rd best player, you have a goddamn problem. So I really don't know. I mean, so LeBron is doing anything you possibly ask of him. This isn't like a 2011 series where he's disappeared and you're wondering what the hell happened. This has a bit of a flavor of the 2015 NBA Finals where he realized that he didn't have the horses, didn't have the cards, and he just doesn't have the guys with him that can pull this off. He might be better off that way. But as of now, I mean, when your 3rd best player is George Hill and your 4th best player is Kyle Korver, you're boned and you're kind of better off not going to the finals than having that on your record.
I mean, yeah, in my opinion, I'm just going to grab it real quick. I think that, like you said, they're probably even worse, in my opinion, than 2007 Cavs. Only because if we just look at 3 players, Zydrunas Ilgauskas was better than any big man currently on the Cavs roster right now. And I don't think that's anything to think about. The immortal shooting guard, Daniel Boobie Gibson, scored in double figures in 6 of his last 7 games in the playoff run that they had, including 31 points on only 9 shots in a closeout game in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pistons. All right. Even big man Daniel Marshall was at least a serviceable stretch big who came and made shots occasionally. The second round against New Jersey, he hit 6 threes in a closeout game there. Obviously, I looked at further stats. We saw what they did in the finals, and they were a mess too. This isn't, I mean, it's really just like, it's not a piss contest. It's kind of sad here. But at least with those games, the difference is it was a one-man show in both of them, but at least some Cavs back then decided to actually do more than show up. This right here, people are going, oh, well, the payroll, and they're getting paid all this, and look at what they're doing when LeBron asked for better teammates, and you guys said, you know, those who reacted favorably to the trade deadline moves, you guys said that, you know, he was going to have a good squad. Well, you know, both can be true. We thought that they were going to do good, and they've all, you know, just made a major crap in the bed in the playoffs. I think you can say it for both of them. I mean, I have so much more to say and nothing at all to say, so I'm going to stop right here.
Well, I'm going to keep talking. So we have to kind of accept that J.R. Smith sold his soul to Satan for the finals, and he is.
I mean, that's known. Everybody knows that. That's a given, TJ.
Yeah, he's currently paying that back by going 0-7, and you know, I mean, kind of says about the Cavs team where they are at right now when J.R. Smith is shoving Al Horford into the second row. And, you know, it's not looking good for them right now. So, Alex, you should be very pleased.
I'm not pleased. I'm an impartial media member, TJ. I do not have a rooting interest.
Get out of here.
Let me refresh. Give me.
But
Your Stevens is showing.
You can go ahead and write letters, and you know, drive your car over a bridge because you're Stan for the Celtics.
Let me ask you this, TJ, Corban, my LeBron guys. This is a bad cast. We know this. Is this series over? I mean, as a Celtics fan, I admitted it. God, you guys didn't know, and you drug it out of me. Now you know. As a Celtics fan, I'm perpetually terrified of LeBron, regardless of if he's playing with 4 7th graders and he's having to play against the 1986 Celtics. LeBron James is one of the 2 best players of all time. Where you rank him, sort of immaterial to me in this discussion. He's terrifying, and we saw that flash just for a minute. Now, it feels like he doesn't quite have the tank that he had a couple of years ago with that ability to just sheer force of will overcome any obstacle, but he's still abjectly horrifying to play against in these moments where the game gets a little bit tenuous. Is this series over? I just don't feel like it is.
I'll let you get it, Corbin.
Okay, Corbin.
Okay. I don't know, starting to shift. I still hold out a little bit of hope, but when the first game happened, everybody was jumping, oh my goodness, the Celtics were all over the Cavs, and they were. But I really thought, as did many media members, that LeBron was really just filling the game out. He didn't really have his trademark aggressiveness. He wasn't, you know, really going for the juggler like he usually does at certain moments of the game when you knew that he would. So I thought, okay, he'll measure that. You know, he's going to have a major bounce back game too. And he did. That first quarter was electric. I think, it was 21 points in the first quarter? Yeah. 42 for the game, 10 rebounds, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. He was all over the place. But you did see him get tired through certain moments. And the Celtics took his best punch and then came right back and really roared ahead as the game kept going. You could see LeBron tired down the stretch, and the Celtics just seemed to just absorb the energy like some freak supervillain in some video game or something. I don't even know. But with that being said, the Celtics were able to not only make LeBron, you know, work for his shots. He only had one, I think, that ESPN said that was classified as open or uncontested, even throughout that torrid stretch. And no other Cav really showed up except for Kevin Love. And you hear the Cavs talking a good talk. J.R. Smith is saying, as we can all see, LeBron's doing too much and, you know, we're making him resort to hero ball. George Hill's saying that he's not playing the right way. He needs to play better. That's all the right thing to say in the locker room, but that's not going to help us walk away from the podium 2-1, 2-2. You actually have to go out there and play the games. And that's where I'm a little concerned if there is a second gear for the rest of those Cavs. Because, quite frankly, I mean, Clarkson got himself – he didn't even get played by Coach Lue. And Coach Lue and questionable decisions go together like peanut butter and jelly. So I would have thought he would at least seen some minutes there. All right. Also, Rodney Hood is just looking shook. Most of their players are either looking shook or ineffective. And if you're going to let LeBron do this and he can only go for a quarter at a time here, 5 minutes down the stretch there, and the Celtics are getting it from a variety of people. And they said, especially with a team like the Celtics, a wounded animal, you got to watch out because you never know how they're going to attack or where it's going to come from. And right now it's coming from everywhere, and the Cavs can't touch it. So I don't really know anymore. I'm a little scared. I think it's like 60-40. The Celtics just take this one in 6.
All right. So you say 60-40, and that's purely because of LeBron being on the Cavaliers. In any other context, it would be 95-5 for the Celtic series because LeBron is a superhuman and a cyborg, as much as Alex hates when I say that. So, I mean, but when you kind of look it down and be as emotionless as possible when you look at the statistics, that the Celtics are just better than the Cavaliers, and when as far as 1 through 11, and when you look at these 7-game series, what the NBA has as an advantage over any of the other leagues is that their playoffs are usually pretty representative of what is really actually happening in their leagues. Over our 7-game series, the better team is going to win. The Celtics are just a better team than the Cavaliers, and the only way that the Cavaliers win are through some superhuman heroics by LeBron James, which are possible. Down 2-0, LeBron has come back 3-1. But, at that time, LeBron had Kyrie Irving with him. Right now, he has George Hill. So, you can look at the statistics, and, it turns out that it happens that George Hill is not as good as Kyrie Irving.
As it were.
Yeah, as it were. So, I'm not really optimistic about the Cavaliers' prospects in this series, and it's probably better for LeBron's legacy that they don't go to the finals, which may be another subject for later on in this pod or another one. But I'm pretty pessimistic about it. We saw in Game 2 LeBron go for 40, 12, and 10, which is about what KD went for. I think he went 38, 5, and 3 against the Rockets, and they still lost. I mean, what more can the guy do, and they still lose? And they're probably going to lose another 2 games. They might steal Game 3 or 4 at home in Cleveland, but otherwise, I'm not sure how the Cavs can pull this one out.
Josh, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here with, I think, a new wrinkle for the show. So, last time LeBron James didn't make the finals, 2010, right? And I think we're talking about how bad his cast was now. I think it was pretty bad then. So, if you guys ever watched the starters, they have their NBA trivia. So let's do this, all right? So 8 other Cleveland Cavaliers played in the last game that LeBron James played in 2010 before he went to the Heat. So when they lost to the Celtics in 2010, 8 other Cavaliers. You guys name them?
Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
Mo Williams.
That is correct. 15 minutes off the bench. Mo Williams started at point guard, played 47 of 48 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Antoine Jameson.
Antoine Jameson, yes. He went 2 of 10, scored 5 points.
Joe Smith? Joe Smith, was he on that 2010?
No Joe Smith.
Okay.
Lakers. He won the ring that year. Lakers, baby. Sorry.
Do we have a Wally Zerbiak sighting in there?
We did not.
Oh.
Man, this is tough.
Delonte West.
Oh, yep, that's definitely one.
Delonte West, yep. 14 minutes, he was minus 12.
Oh, the big Shaqtus himself.
Shaq, a 38-year-old Shaquille O'Neal played 24 minutes.
Oh, wow. I think I'm going to get all Joe Hickson.
Joe Hickson did not get off the bench, but he was on the bench.
Okay. You could see someone play 2K a lot with the 20.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm not getting any of these either. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. And I'm still not getting any.
All right, we got
Who did we miss?
3 guys left.
How many?
3 guys, including
Dan Gibson.
Oh, Boobie Gibson, right? Boobie.
Yeah, Dan Gibson.
Not that year. No, he was. He was injured. He was out.
What about Sasha Pavlicic or whatever his name was? Wasn't he there?
No, man, you got some fun names here. Nope, not
Anderson,
that year. All right.
Anderson Varejao. Anderson Varejao.
Anderson,
Yeah, of course.
27 minutes off the bench.
Oh, my bad. Anthony Parker. Come on, I can't forget that guy.
Anthony Parker, there you go. He was the last starter, 29 minutes. And then this is the last guy. This was the only Cavalier to have a positive plus-minus in the game. He played 9 minutes with +5. You guys aren't gonna ever get this. Jamario Moon.
God, I forgot Jamario Moon existed.
You know what's funny? There's another question about. Yeah, he's the only one to have played with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron James before they all formed together in the Big Three, like in successive seasons.
Wow, there's a trivia for you.
There you go. Thank you. Wow, that was a good one.
Josh,
wow, I like that.
Josh, you bring in these nice little wrinkles. One time you went into the future and told us about it. You're just a go-to guy. All right.
That was.
Josh has taken us a trip down memory lane. We've talked about this. Now, we're here at 2-0. Where are we going to be next week when we talk about this series after Game 5? Where are we going to be? Is it going to be 3-2? Is this going to be a wrap? What's the situation?
We're going to sing the praises of LeBron as we go into Game 5 with the Cavs up. Well, no, I'm playing. We're gonna tie this baby up, and I'm going to have my pride back and reinstated. And, yeah. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the Western Conference because that's all.
So you're saying 2-2. We're coming back to Game 5 tied 2-2.
Yes, that's where the Celtics still show their youth, and that's why I have an iota of hope. On the road, they have. I don't even know if they won a road game yet in this playoffs. I don't think so. If so, one maybe
against Philadelphia.
Okay, so one. There you go against another young one.
Yep.
I think they can lose both in the land. I think it will happen? Like I said, 60-40, but. I'm going on the 60% here. I'm riding that wave all the way through. I've been on this bandwagon since the trade deadline for LeBron to lead them to the finals, and gosh darn it, Jordan Clarkson will not stand in my way.
All right.
Corban. I don't know if you're aware, but J.R. Smith had a funeral about a year ago. I attended. It was lovely.
Oh, wow.
And he has been bad at basketball. Dribbling, passing, shooting for about a year now.
Okay.
The thing about the Cavaliers is that they need so many things to go right as compared to the Celtics. They need Kevin Love to be good. They need Tristan Thompson to be good. They need Kyle Korver and or J.R. Smith to be good. It can't be one or the other. It needs to be both. And that has a very low chance of happening. J.R. Smith has been garbage for the entire season. As I said, he's been dead for about 365 days. And I'm very pessimistic as a LeBron stan about the Cavaliers' prospects in this series.
All right, let's flip it over and let's talk just for a minute about the Boston Celtics. And they've been impressive. It's a very young roster. It's sort of anchored by Al Horford. But I think the talk of the town and the person you have to talk most about, and probably the most influential Celtic at this given moment, is Brad Stevens, who has been excellent. He's encouraged a calm atmosphere, an atmosphere of next man up, and he's sort of fostered these young players and allowed them to grow into their role, particularly Terry Rozier. We saw Jason Tatum play really, really well in the third quarter after a little bit of a slower start. But this is a very young roster that seems to be outperforming, and you sort of have to lay that at the feet of Coach Brad Stevens. Is this the most impressive coaching performance that you can remember? Now, I mean, we're not all tremendously old here, but we have a pretty nice breadth of knowledge on the NBA. Is this the most impressive coaching performance that you can remember?
Real quick, did we not see Coach Lue lead the Cavs in 2016? Okay. That was just a monumental coaching masterpiece with great last-minute ATOs, key substitutions. No, yeah. I think you're right.
Corban has said a word in like 45 minutes, and you're coming out with this garbage about Ty Lue, coach.
I mean, we are not going to crap on Ty Lue. Connor needs to speak up. You're right. My bad.
All right, Connor, can you remember a better coaching performance than this?
Honestly, no, I can't. I don't really have any off the top of my head that really shift out. I think with having the talent that he does, I think that they do have some talent, but not nearly at the level of talent that other teams have. Certainly, the Cavs have less, but but compared to like the Warriors and the Rockets, I don't think there's any way this series would be 2-0 without Stevens. And one of the things that I really love about all NBA coaches that I like personally is that they all do a very good job of taking advantage of mismatches, and I think that Stevens has done a really good job honing in on those that the Celtics have.
Yeah, I think you're totally correct, Josh. I see you puzzling over there. I see you thinking very hard about whether you could think of a better coaching match. Did you come up with anything? I mean, I try to sort of set aside my Celtic fandom and look at this and just say he has been impressive. And when you look at the rest of the roster, no first team All NBA, no second team All NBA. No third-team All-NBA, probably. Al Horford may sneak in there. This is a team without a lot of accolades, and so I think you have to kind of lay it at his feet. What do you think?
So I want to give all the props to Brad Stevens, but if I'm trying to think of a coaching performance, what Greg Popovich did in the playoffs last season, I think goes underrated. If you think about that closeout game, the Spurs went into Houston without Kawhi Leonard, and they beat the Houston Rockets and James Harden by, I'm doing some quick math here, 39 points. 39 points in Houston without Kawhi Leonard. Look, he got a plus 32 out of Jonathan Simmons. Rookie Dejounte Murray played exceptionally well. Kyle Anderson was destroying the Rockets. So I think what he did, Pop did in that one game, and it's just one game, but I think against a team in last year's Houston Rockets are probably equally good as this year's Cavs or Sixers. So I think that game was incredibly impressive. And then you look, they carried that momentum and were up 20-some points on the Warriors before Kawhi went down again with injury. So I think that needs to be mentioned if we're talking about recent coaching. What Brad Stevens has been doing is incredible, and I don't wish to besmirch him. I just think if we're trying to come up with another name, that's who comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really good name. And I think ultimately we will, because of what happened in the Western Conference Finals with the injury to Kawhi Leonard, we'll probably not remember that one as fondly when it comes to performances by a coach. But that was a really great series. That was a series that I don't think a lot of people gave San Antonio the time of day to win it, and they went in there and they really took care of business without their best player, like you said. And I think some of that even carried over into this season, that Greg Popovich had a little bit of an underrated coaching performance, bringing his team to 47-35, getting them into the playoffs with really like sort of LaMarcus Aldridge and friends. And I think that Pop, obviously he's one of the greats, and so you can't really have it one of those discussions without talking about him. All right, that's enough about the Eastern Conference. Let's talk about the Western Conference for a little bit. Game 1, blowout game in Houston. A lot of people calling for the series to be over. A lot of people asking for the ref to sort of rule it as a technical knockout. Game 2, sort of the opposite. Houston comes out, they right the ship, they really hammer down and hit some threes and end up blowing out the Warriors. Now, we've had blowout in Game 1, we've had blowout in Game 2. Houston did not protect home court. Where does this leave this series right now, tied 1-1 going to Game 3 on Sunday?
All right, I think that the key for Houston is going to be the role players, because they have star power and the Warriors have star power. Now, the Warriors probably have more, but I think the key is going to be the role players. And you look at what happened in Game 1, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Luka Doncic, the defensive backbone of this team, the way they're going to slow down the Warriors, they shot 1 for 9 from deep. In Game 2, they shot 6 for 10 from deep. PJ Tucker was 5 for 6. That's not even counting Eric Gordon, who was another 6 for 9. So that's where Houston is going to, butter their bread, if you will, is open three-point attempts, especially in the corners, in transition and semi-transition. That's how they're going to score, because the Warriors are incredible defensively, and they were slowing down Houston. They were gumming things up for James Harden, and that's how Houston scored points. And so if you look at, can the Rockets keep this up going forward and going back to Oakland, I think that it's got to be the role players continuing to hit shots. And is that sustainable? Maybe, maybe not, but you have to think the Warriors are going to adjust. And if they do, and PJ Tucker isn't getting wide open looks at the three-point line, I struggle to think what card Houston still has left to play there. So I think I was great. I think Houston will probably come back and win Game 5, whether they're tied 2-2 or down 3-1. But I see Houston, having figured something out that's going to allow them to, swing the series back in the direction? No, I don't.
Yeah, I agreed with most of the stuff you said about the Rockets, how well they work in transition and how that creates all those open corner 3 opportunities for Ariza and Tucker. I think one of the reasons why the Warriors will pull away eventually, probably starting either next game or game 4, is that they just have so many more different options of guys that could put the ball on the floor and score in a variety of ways. With Houston, I feel like you're very limited to where you have to have Paul and Harden do everything. And the only way you're really going to be able to take advantage of Ariza and Tucker, and sometimes Eric Gordon has shows some stuff off the bounce, but not always. I think that just being limited to just having those guys be so one-dimensional offensively really hurts them.
I have been impressed, or I was impressed last night with the way Houston played. I think they got punched in the mouth in game 1, and I think a lot of people sort of, based on the track record of Chris Paul and James Harden, fairly or unfairly, I think a lot of people sort of expected them to lay down. And I guess you can throw Mike D'Antoni on that in that group as well, as people who have not played their best basketball in the playoffs or coached their best basketball. And I think that the key to that, like you said, Josh, was the role players, but not necessarily in just making shots. I felt like Eric Gordon. I felt like Trevor Ariza. I felt like Clint Capella. I feel like the non-Chris Paul and James Harden guys really went into game 2 to put their stamp on that game. And now, whether that carries over, I personally don't think they can win. I think I've long held out that I think that Golden State is a much, much better team than Houston. And I think playing the math and trying to outshoot them 4 times out of 7 is a good way to try and beat them. But I just don't think that when it comes down to who guards Kevin Durant on possessions in close games, I don't think they have a guy. And I think that Golden State has a couple of guys who they can sort of throw at Harden and at Paul to kind of slow them down. And ultimately, the playoffs is about making buckets in tough defensive situations. And while James Harden is a scorer, we've seen him wear down. We've seen Chris Paul's athleticism or injuries or whatever else sort of where his body sort of betrays him. And we've seen Kevin Durant rise to the occasion and be a 7-foot-tall player with a great handle who can score. And I think that when you sort of take all those things into account, the Warriors are a better team. Now, I really respect what Houston did this season, and I do want to get that out there. I think that the waiting out the Warriors window was bad for basketball, and I think what Daryl Morey did was pretty brave, I guess is probably not the right word, but he tried something, and it might not work out, but we need more we need more general managers like Daryl Morey who are going to go up against the super teams and see if they can win. Because otherwise, whether it's LeBron and Paul George going to Philadelphia next year and making the next super team, the next super team is coming. The team that will dethrone the Warriors and will sort of define the next 5 years of basketball, that team is coming. And they will be able to beat the Warriors, and at some point they will be able to dethrone them, and it's just a matter of how the other 29 franchises react to that team being formed. And so I really respect what Morey did. I don't think they're going to win, but I think that we need to talk about that from that perspective at least a little bit.
Well, I mean, real quick, so Daryl Morey has probably handled the situation of the Warriors as best as anyone in the league has, as far as a way to play basketball, way to construct a team. You have James Harden, you have Chris Paul. So you add LeBron to Houston.
Okay. All right.
And what did that change? I mean the Warriors probably still have a better 1 through 11. So you add. I really don't know who unseats the Warriors, but the Warriors run into a serious problem with Klay Thompson. Say, they win the finals this year, Klay Thompson has 3 chips, and he's like, forget it, I have 3 chips, I'm going to go earn money somewhere else and get a bunch of money, and then another team arises. I mean, I kind of, the Warriors could be over sooner than anticipated because, everyone is trying to, earn money. This is a profession. Feelings don't matter. People have, their personal lives to take care of. So just like with the Heat, when we thought it was going to be, well, not 1, but 2, but 3, but 4, but 5, but 6, but 7, it could be over sooner than we realize. And we may be talking about the next super team. And I think Houston in a reasonable place to get that going because they have a superstar in Harden and Chris Paul. Philadelphia, and of course, Alex's Celtics have Tatum, who is going to be the greatest player of all time. So I think we may be taking the Warriors for granted as far as their longevity. Kevin Durant is probably one of the top 10 players of all time by the end of his career, but I think we may be overhyping the long-term prospects of the Warriors and undercutting the long-term prospects of other teams. But it really is on the whims of LeBron James's 1-in-1 max contracts, where he takes 1 year guaranteed and then opt in for the second year for whatever team he goddamn decides he wants to be on.
I think that you made a really interesting point there, TJ, about what might be the thing that the Warriors have to worry about the most, and it is the luxury tax. Obviously, Klay's extension coming up. Draymond is in the not-too-distant future, I think next summer as well. They're probably going to pay an exorbitant amount when it comes to the luxury tax, and they're going to have to make some really tough decisions about keeping this core together. I think that when you combine that with the indomitable human spirit of not wanting to lose, when you talk about guys like LeBron James or whoever else these competitive players are around the league, I think guys are talking all the time now, which is something that didn't used to happen. I think that All-Star Weekend has just become summer camp, recruitment weekend, come play with me in Houston or come play in Philadelphia. And I think that ultimately that's a good thing, because I think that the power should reside with the players, but it certainly has shaped the dynamic of how these players interact and how they make their decisions and how the power rides with them. So I think in this coming summer, with LeBron James, with Paul George, with Kawhi Leonard's situation, whatever it may be, there are a number of players who are available, and if they decide they want to put themselves together in a way, maybe they all want to go to San Antonio. I'm not reporting that. I'm just saying that we have never been in a situation more so than we are right now where the players are powerful. And that's how it should be. They're out there, putting their bodies on the line, and their earning capacities 10, 12 years tops, unless they're LeBron James. But it is a different situation than I think what we've ever dealt with.
I mean, when you talk about LeBron's legacy, I mean, what you just said is probably one of the most salient as far as putting players' power ahead all else. I mean, you saw it with Kevin Durant deciding to move to Golden State over OKC. Would have been seen as utter betrayal, but LeBron shouldered that burden to begin with. And Corban, I feel like you may have something to say on this as far as, basically the martyr that LeBron has become, sacrificing and, shouldering the burden of all this criticism between what is a heartless league and what is ultimately a business decision.
You know what? You really set the table, but you're going to be surprised. I agree. I mean, to a certain extent, he has changed the way that, the playing power is, as far as making your own decisions, aligning yourself. I don't think with the move he made, saved Kevin Durant in a way, because the abuse that he's taking for his own team move was different than LeBron's, because, and I'll be the first to say it as well, LeBron made a super team, Kevin Durant joined one, blah, 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 distinctions and nuances, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm with you to a certain extent in, having that playing power and keeping it, and really setting your own bargain as far as where I'm going to join, and, loyalty to my brand, to myself and to my team while I'm with you. But just know that I'm not going to be forced to, put my future on the line or leverage the remaining years I have for your franchise if you're not making the right decisions. And to be fair, LeBron did, the first 8 years, he rode the course of Cleveland. And then 2010 came, he's like, what, I'm going to own my own destiny. And I think that was the difference. Because, yes, obviously, when a player, almost like with the Knicks and Porzingis, or, any team that drafts Doncic or DeAndre Ayton, you have that player for a guaranteed 5 to 9 years, after they play out their rookie contract, and then if you choose to match them, whatever, restricted free agency, But after that, the players can now go and say, hey, you know what? If you haven't been treating me right from this entire time forward, if I haven't been feeling like I'm in the right situation, having the right support from the office, then I can go. Gordon Hayward, and this may or may not be accurate, but didn't like the way he was treated in restricted free agency. And then he's had a very few successful seasons between then and his own unrestricted free agency. But whatever happened back then wasn't lost on him. And that did factor into his decision when it came time to leave in 2017. So,
but as the resident LeBron stands, do you think it was okay, or do you think it is a responsible model going forward for other players such as KD or other transcendent top 5 potential players to hold teams hostage to one and done contracts where, you commit to 1 year and then you opt in for the next?
I don't know if I am fully with it. In ways, this is really coming to bite LeBron right now, because had he committed to maybe a couple of years or more, they could have made moves that could both win now and win in the future, instead of picking and choosing what they would rather do to keep LeBron for an additional year. So with that, I'm not certain. At the same time, I think it comes down to a player-by-player basis and how their team's been treating them. If you have a franchise and a front office that's been behind you from the jump, that's been trying to bring in good talent, keeping your team competitive and really, aligning with your talents to make this team the best they can and win now, and not really bonehead decisions or drafting mistakes or front office dysfunction, then I think as a top 5 or any player, you should show that loyalty and go, you know what, I'm going to work with you so we both become a great team, because this is what it is, a partnership to ultimately win the championship. But with LeBron, in his case, that trust with Cleveland has never really been there. Once he left the first time, it was gone. And then there was a modicum of that trust back when he returned, but he's been playing it by ear basically since then, because they haven't really rebuilt that. And as we've already said, as LeBron ages is different, because now, as this year has shown, Cleveland had to choose between, are we winning now, or are we into the future? As far as Golden State with Kevin Durant, and you can name 4 or 5 other teams and their star players, the Pelicans, Anthony Davis, I think you have to look at that case by case. Golden State's definitely shown that they have the team that Kevin Durant wanted to go to. They've kept that team together through one off season. We'll see how that goes. The Pelicans, they got to the playoffs. They had some success. What they do with DeMarcus Cousins and free agency, we'll see how that goes. But I think you have to look at that individually and not paint a broad brush over, because everyone's different in that instance as far as their loyalty, how well they played, how the teams responded, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, Josh, you haven't said anything for about half an hour now. What do you think about this question about one in option contracts as far as how they affect team building?
I think that LeBron styles himself a trailblazer, and I think that he, not on Portland Trailblazers, but I think that he sees himself as stepping forward and representing a path that other empowered young and mostly black men can do, and I think that that's the legacy he wants to have. So he has helped bring a lot of these guys that he grew up with that were in lower income areas. He's pulled them up with him, guys like Rich Paul, to be able to run their own agency, or to, on the other side, to be able to run a media empire. And I think that's what he wants to do. I think his next step is to be able to become, a powerful person outside the world of sports. And I think,
mind you, clutch sports is probably super illegal, and they're probably, Robert Mueller is looking into that as far as Donald Trump's Russian investigation is probably tied in somehow. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's likely, but so I think that's what LeBron does. I think that's what he wants to do, and so I think he looked probably at decades of players having to do what the owners told them to do, and he said, "No, I'm going to turn this around." And so in Miami, he tried that. It didn't really work. He went back to Cleveland, and he has been able to do that. He has been the man in control in Cleveland, as much as he wants to say that he stepped back. He influence the team in his own way. And I think that that's where he wants things. He wants to show, hey, I can be something different. I can be a player who controls not only his destiny, but the destiny of an entire team. And I think that's where he wants to be. But I think that's hard for other players to do that. So I don't think that's necessarily a model for a guy like Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook or Kawhi Leonard or Anthony Davis to follow. I think it's unique to LeBron because LeBron's such a special player. But I think it does have consequences. You guys are right. These one-year contracts, the way the team, they just can't stay young enough, and they're constantly getting older veterans and trading assets in the future to win now. You saw that wear things down in Miami. You're seeing it wear down in Cleveland. And honestly, that's the mark of having an elite superstar. When you look at these transcendent guys who just are the body and soul of their team, Kobe, everybody hated being around him, and he wore it down with that Shaq or other guys. The guys just had a limit to how long they could play with him. Michael Jordan, he'd do guys up and spit them out. I mean, you read a book like The Jordan Rules, and it's just nasty. Like superstar, to have that edge to drive yourself to be one of the best players of all time.
Like you're saying, Bron isn't just a superstar. He is in the Jordan pantheon of all-time greats, and what he has is a different type of empowerment that probably Jordan didn't even have, of being able to move across teams and be able to perform as a sort of mercenary, like probably most comparably Deion Sanders in the 90s, bouncing between the Falcons and the 49ers and the Cowboys.
Baltimore Ravens, don't forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, he had his last interception for a touchdown was for the Baltimore Ravens. LeBron has his ability to move as a mercenary in the way that other all-time greats haven't been able to, because there's been such an attachment attached to finishing your career with a single team. LeBron has already blown that out the window. So he could say, for example, finish career with the Lakers and win a championship, or even the Warriors. In case you want to take veteran minimum, he never will.
So we'll see. Okay, I want to cut it. I want to cut in here for a second, TJ, because I think you bring up an interesting point that a lot of people want to talk about with LeBron, and it's taking less money. And I think that there is a lot of people, a lot of fans, not people in the know, I'm not saying people in the league, but a lot of people say, well, why doesn't LeBron just take vet minimum, go play with this team, win a title? I think that LeBron sits firmly at the crossroads of two different things, and that is he's the best player in the league, and he has a legacy that he wants to chase Jordan, and he wants to be the best of all time, and he certainly has submitted quite a resume there. But I think that the other thing that we always forget about LeBron James is that he is incredibly invested in what the other players around him get, and as a result, I don't think that there's any possibility that he can take less, 1 penny less than the max every time, because he has done such great work from an empowerment point of view to empower these young players to control their own destiny and to be able to move how they want to move. And I think that because of that, with him and with Chris Paul, players who both have high-ranking positions within the Players Association, I think they have to continue to max out and take that max money, because they have to represent the 448 other guys who are in the league. And maybe, when it comes to LeBron, maybe he's not representing all 450. Maybe he's representing the other 24 players, the other 30 players who are worth that max deal. But the strides that the league has made in terms of player empowerment and in terms of revenue and getting the money that is made through TV, through gate sales, through ticket sales, through merchandising, whatever, getting that money back to the people who earned it in the players. I think that we sometimes as fans sort of forget that LeBron James is an incredibly ingenious businessman, but he's also somebody who has to think about not necessarily just his bottom line, not necessarily just his championships, but he has to think about his representatives when it comes to the Players Association as well.
I mean, so, not at the expense of Connor, who hasn't said anything for about half an hour.
Are you getting paid by making sure everybody gets enough talk in? Is that what you're doing?
I don't want to monopolize everyone's time. LeBron is in this unique position of being acutely aware of his place among the pantheon of all-time greats, something that Michael Jordan may have alluded to in private company, but never spoken to much about out loud, when LeBron has spoken very much publicly about chasing the ghost. But LeBron is pretty much somewhat accepted he's never going to be able to catch 6 rings, but everything else is going to be to where he's going to have everything but the 6 rings, to where Jordan becomes... the only argument for Jordan is the 6 rings, and then it becomes the sort of reductio ad absurdum about that. But where LeBron is thinking about empowering other players, he seems to be willing to sacrifice championships in the service of empowering players as far as player rights, and ultimately it kind of speaks to his willingness to speak to social justice as far as civil rights in general, as labor rights and things like that, as opposed to just his championships. He seems to be seeking something greater than just NBA rings. But Connor, I'm really interested to hear what you have, since you have spoken in about 35 goddamn minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to get a word in there earlier, and then everything just kind of took a left turn there, where we went into labor rights and stuff, which is a little more to be getting in for me when I just graduated from high school last year. Don't have as much of an interest in that. But anyways, I think one of the points that I wanted to talk about, though, was when you were talking about the idea of all these super teams and players building off these one-and-done contracts. I think one of the things that a lot of players need to take into consideration is just and that they don't really take into consideration, and they probably will start soon because this is something new they're still feeling out, but they need to take into consideration how well they fit on that team. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Warriors work as well as they do, is it's not just 4 people just deciding, hey, I want to all play together, even though not all of them signed at the same time, but they fit so well together. You have Durant and Curry that can both dominate the ball or play off the ball. You have Thompson that plays well off the ball. You have Draymond that plays well both on and off the ball. And I think that you see that more now, too, when you talk about teams like the Thunder specifically, where they had Paul George and Carmelo Anthony, even though Carmelo Anthony is a shell of what he used to be coming in now. And it's just like, well, we're not really sure what our fit is here. We were just 3 big names that said, hey, we're going to get together and try to make a run at something. And it didn't end up working out well at all, as they ended up losing to the Jazz in the first round.
I think that it's necessary just to sort of take a LeBron James in sort of that all-encompassing way, and I think that we do him a disservice. It's similarly with Michael Jordan in a different way, and I hate putting those 2 names beside each other because I don't feel like we need that, but whatever. People love to talk about those 2 people in the same sentence. Sure, whatever. Michael Jordan revolutionized the way basketball players marketed themselves. He worked with Gatorade, McDonald's, Crunch Bar, all of the things that he did. He changed it, and Josh
But what did he say about Rodney King?
What? He didn't say anything, and he said that
exactly.
He said that Republicans buy sneakers too, and he stepped back from that, but he set the table for the people that came after him, for the guys to be able to make the $200 million Chinese sneaker money, as Klay Thompson apparently is, whatever. But LeBron James is a new breed of superstar, and he ultimately will represent the 2000s, 2010s, and he has taken a stand politically, he has taken a stand socially, and I think that he's taken a bigger stand behind the scenes, and I think that when we talk about legacies, I think that LeBron's name will go up there with Bill Russell as one of those guys who really went out on a limb for his culture, who went out on a limb for his teammates, and sort of just pushed himself out of maybe what was his best situation. If LeBron decided that he had wanted to win titles, he could have done it every year from the first year he went to Miami. I mean, from 11 on, he could have been winning titles and just jumping around and playing for 8 different teams, and that would have happened. But he's somebody who has compromised his ability to win night in and night out, or year in and year out, to advance a greater good. Now, does that take him out of discussion for greatest of all time? I don't know. I don't want to play that game. It's not a discussion that even tremendously really interests me.
I want to play.
Yeah, I know you want to play it, but the point is that LeBron James has been a great player, but he's also been an incredibly influential player. And I think that when you talk about his legacy, that footnote is so vital to who he was in the league that when we look back in 20, 30 years from now, that's who we're going to remember right beside a player who made 8 straight finals. And
that's like the social chain influence. That's never anything Jordan wanted. Jordan just wanted to play basketball in front of him. He wanted to spit him out. That's what he wanted to do. And the other thing he wanted to do was be accomplish that. He was probably, honestly, the first black and just be more, 90+% of the people in the world. That put a step, even if he wasn't in step. And he was probably the first black player, of course, but basketball player to hit that level as well. And I think that's meaningful too, because even if it wasn't intentional, even if it wasn't as impactful and as there's a word I'm missing, but like LeBron James is doing this on purpose. He's doing it, calculated in certain ways. And while MJ done that, I think he paved a path for the people that came after him.
Oh no, LeBron's being calculated to be a good person and help people and leave a legacy that others will cherish and care about and will want to lead their lives by. What a horrible person LeBron James is.
I mean, I don't think anybody's saying that though.
I mean,
it wasn't a negative.
So it's, I don't know. I mean, this is something I'm working on for the 94 Feet report as an essay talking about LeBron's legacy versus Jordan's legacy and the way, one's character fits in. But it's almost as if LeBron's character is dismissed, and the incredible things he's working on with the Akron community, personally funding $44 million of his own money to send 1,100 kids to college and things along that. So, I mean, it's not all about basketball as much as Jordan stands will want to put, but not to put that upon you, Josh. I know that's not the argument you're necessarily making, but I got triggered, and that's where I am right now. So here we are.
All right, Josh, you want to pick it back up? I mean, I think that you make a good point, TJ, and I certainly have no problem with that. But I kind of didn't take it as that's what you were saying, Josh. You want to sort of get the rejoinder on that one?
Yeah, I mean, just to tie it up with a bow, what I was trying to say is I think Michael Jordan paved the way for the people that came after him to have other things that were important to them other than basketball. By making basketball, explode in the way that he did, and he had help, of course, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and these guys that played with him. But Michael Jordan was the guy, and everyone for years and years and years said Jordan was the guy. Jordan's the best ever, and Jordan was who they went after. But I think Jordan established basketball as a legitimate major worldwide sport, and I think it's only continued to grow from there. So I think what Jordan did is he opened up a door that other guys could go through and do what they wanted. Some guys can be in the spotlight. Some people don't have to be. They can have other interests. But you think about a guy like Kobe Bryant, he's still relevant. He just won an Oscar because basketball players have, a big of what MJ did. So I think Jordan didn't want to have a legacy like that. He just wanted to play basketball. But I think through that, he paved a way that now LeBron and other guys can go after in the way that they want to. LeBron wants to do it by, helping to empower young black people, and helping to show that players can have influence outside of just on the basketball court. And I think we're going to see that he's going to continue his legacy after basketball, and obviously in a different way than a guy like Kobe. I think he's going to continue to do that, and he's empowered to do that by what Michael Jordan did.
So your point is taken, but I do ask where Jordan was. LA riots and Rodney King. We have examples of LeBron James with Trayvon Martin wearing a hoodie and Eric Garner with his Comic Sans I Can't Breathe t-shirts. Though
let's interrupt.
Find an irony a couple white guys talking about this.
Corban, go ahead.
About this.
I was gonna say, I do think that's what Josh is trying to say in the sense that wasn't Jordan's. The popularity, everything that came with it. Obviously, I'm not gonna go. I don't know Jordan's intention as far as did he do it for the money or anything, but obviously his primary intention was basketball player. Getting into everyone's political debate and the social climate, that wasn't what he was about, and that's more or less the argument that I'm seeing in this case, where LeBron is genuinely interested in these things. He genuinely wants to speak out about these things, be that figurehead, try to share those resolves and those issues and make them first and foremost. For Jordan, I mean, based off the body of work and everything we're talking about, it wasn't really about that. Not saying that's an indictment on his character or anything of that nature, but you could say the same thing. Well, Charles Barkley, when he did say something, I don't think you want him to say it, but there was a lot of superstars in the 80s, 90s era. We can talk about Dominique Wilkins. Don't remember him saying anything. He probably did. He maybe didn't. There's a bunch of different players we can make that note for. Obviously, Michael Jordan was the player. Like, he is the icon. Like, that's him. I get that. But in the same vein, that wasn't what he set out to be in that respect. You know what I mean? Like, almost like Charles Barkley's "don't call me a role model" type thing.
But what about having the ethical responsibility as being the most famous person in the world at that time?
See, I'm with you, but that goes down a totally different rabbit hole because go into that could go into all sports, and ethics and sports are intertwined, and yet so often when players go into sports to obviously make the NBA or make the professional leagues, that's not really first and foremost on their mind. I do think there's a certain responsibility, but I also think that's a very dangerous rabbit hole to get us into another 2 hours to go into. You know what I mean? At this moment.
Well, to tease my next article on the 94 Feet report, it'll be a lot about that. But I don't want to go too much.
Okay, I'm going to jump. Josh, did you have something?
I just wanted to.
Connor. Okay.
Not as much speaking to like the whole political and racial concerns, but I think that just talking about LeBron and what he's done economically for the city of Cleveland specifically. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, about an hour away from Cleveland. I've seen what he's done firsthand since he's been there, with him not even some stuff that he doesn't even know he's doing, with how well that bars and places like that do after games, and how many more jobs that creates that he just does from just being a great basketball player. And then the whole other thing of just giving kids in an area where there isn't anything going on in that area at all, just giving them some kind of hope to do something and be something. And he's given them hope to be something more than just basketball players. He's given them hope to be good people, and he's given them hope to be college graduates. He's given them hope to do everything.
Josh, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just so to finish the thought, I think that TJ has a big point that Jordan and these other guys, we don't have a legacy of athletes making an impact and having, the influence to do that before guys like LeBron. And I think that's because basketball players didn't know they had that influence. And a lot of guys tried to exert that influence in the 60s and 70s and 80s. If you go back and read a lot of what Bill Russell said, that was really impactful. And we're talking of, thousands of people, instead of hundreds of millions who are hearing what LeBron says. And that's because basketball has a platform. LeBron has a platform. He has a level of celebrity because of what Jordan did. I think that's the point I was trying to make. Michael Jordan never wanted to be that social justice. And we can talk, and I think it's a reasonable conversation about whether he should have used his platform, whether he had a responsibility to do that. Because I think it's reasonable that maybe he didn't need to do that, but maybe you could say he did, and I think that's fair as well. And LeBron has chosen to use his platform, and that's absolutely a good thing. I think what LeBron has done for low-income communities, I think what he has done for minorities, I think what he has done for people across the country who felt like they haven't had a voice has been incredible. And I think he's really stepped up in huge ways. But let's be honest, he's also chosen to step up in other ways, like politically. And I think that's less black and white. And I think that you're seeing him use his influence for what he thinks is important as well. So I think that you probably want to balance it out, that LeBron probably isn't 100% on the angelic side, and Michael Jordan probably isn't 100% on the demonic side. I think they each were trying to accomplish different things. But I think that this is a fascinating conversation that we have because these are some of the greatest players to ever played, and they've chosen to impact the game and the world in different ways. So I think it definitely makes for a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here for a second. We're sort of pushing up against time. I'm putting a pin in this. We're going to come back to it. This is an interesting conversation. I have a lot of points where I don't necessarily know that you have to sort of use your celebrity to advance a social cause or whatever. I'm not saying shut up and play basketball, because I don't want to tell anyone how to do whatever it is they want to do. But I think that in Jordan's case, that he didn't necessarily want to do that, and by no means should he be compelled to do that. And I think that there's something to be talked about here, but I do want to put a pin in this, because I think while this episode of the show took a hard left turn from what I thought we were going to talk about, here we are, and it's been a great discussion. But before we go, there's a couple of things I just want to touch on very briefly. And Connor, I'm gonna kick this back, and I'm gonna start with you. Who is making the NBA Finals? After 2 games of both conference finals, who's making the NBA Finals?
You know, if you would have asked me that question probably about a week and a half ago, I would have said Warriors and Cavs, but now I'm going to go with the Warriors and the Celtics. I just don't think LeBron has the support around him now to do it.
All right. Corban, what about you, man?
Warriors, Celtics.
Yes.
I'm a go there.
Josh, what about you, man?
Yeah, I think Warriors Celtics not only is what makes sense. I think that's just where these things, just that the Celtics are ahead. I think they have a better team, and I think that there was an interesting question I just wanted to mention that was asked on the YouTube channel about if it ends up being Boston and Houston, if Boston could win, maybe they could, and that would be an interesting series. So I just wanted to highlight that, but we didn't get back around to that. But my pick would be Boston and Golden State as well.
TJ, you're the last stalwart. I hesitate to ask because I feel like you're going to have a lot of opinions on this, but NBA Finals, who's your pick?
Well, Corban, I'm very disappointed. I thought you and I were both going to send a cassette tape to Eminem talking about how great LeBron is and how he pulled them out. For the sake of being contrarian, to be able to pull this videotape later, to be proven right, I'm going to say Cavaliers are going to pull out from 2-0 and beat the Celtics, if only despite Alex, and lose to the Warriors in 5.
All right, I consider myself personally spited by that. I want to thank everybody for watching. I know we've had some good interaction with people on YouTube. Twitter people have been watching as well, sending us comments and questions. I appreciate the audience, and I appreciate everybody coming out, and thank you for always being a part of this. This is something we do every Thursday night. We may sort of step it up as we get towards the NBA Finals and be a little bit more regular on that. But before we go, it wouldn't be a great show unless I was giving Four Riders a chance to plug some things that they're doing. So, Connor, you work with Hoops Habit, you draft guy. What can we look for you for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time of the year, of course. I had a post-lottery mock draft that was just put out on Hoops Habit, along with a pretty much persuasive piece on how much I love William McDowell White. All the NBA guys get to know him right now. I know Alex is laughing. And then other than that, I got a bunch of draft profiles coming up and day-to-day coverage of the Combine as well.
Fantastic. I can't wait to read your Combine coverage. I've been similarly impressed with everything that you've done so far, and I'm really glad you took some time out of the schedule to be on the show. I can't wait to have you back. Corban, what about you, man? What are you working on?
So, all of my content is pretty much on the media side. Behind the Twitter handle, working on something big. It might be coming up pretty soon, so definitely stay tuned. Also want to give a shout out to all of the followers for the 94 Feet Report Twitter handle. Over 1,008 right now. Baby steps for getting up there, but we appreciate the support. Every follower, you are important, even if you aren't exactly followed back. We feel you. The love is there. All right. And other than that, 94 Feet Pod and what we're doing here. Can't wait for free agency, man. The off season. Once we get rolling with that, I see big things coming out. Big things.
Don't wish basketball to be over, Corban. Don't do that. Let us have the NBA Finals first.
It never ends. It never ends. That's the cool thing, though. But you're right. You're right.
Don't wish it away for us just yet. Josh, what about you, man? Anything you got in the chamber for us next couple weeks?
Yeah, for sure. So just dropped 10 takeaways from the draft lottery night. So I think that's still live enough to go check that out on 94 Feet Report. I'm also covering the Bucks over at Hoops Habit. So tomorrow I'll be dropping 5 options for the Bucks to take at pick number 17. So I'll have to reference that mock draft that dropped that Connor mentioned to see who Milwaukee should take. And I'm also going to be dropping my own big board, a revised version over on the Lottery Mafia. This is where their wheelhouse, covering the draft as well. So definitely go check them out. A smaller site, but they're putting out really good stuff.
I appreciate all of the draft content that is coming out from all angles of the internet. Josh, I know it's a big day for you with Bud signing to coach the Bucks, and I know you were tracking flights earlier today. So I appreciate you taking the time out of the show to be a part of it and talk basketball with us. TJ, what about you, man? Close us out. Let us know what you're doing. Sort of new to the site, joining us, and we're glad to have you because you brought this very strange discussion that I did not think we would be having, so I appreciate that. But what are you working on?
So I'm working on being myself. I am trying to bring respect to the site, but the big thing I'm working on as far as writing goes is something I alluded to earlier, is a Jordan LeBron piece, which has been argued ad absurdum, but I think something that hasn't been really discussed is the character of both men and how it impacts their legacies. And that's something I'm really looking forward to wrapping up and publishing on the 94 Feet Report.
Fantastic. And I'll take the last plug of the evening. We are finishing up our team side on the draft guide for the 94 Feet Report. We're doing team-centric boards where we're focusing on what we think each team should do. Now, with the reports that I've heard in the past couple of days, we're a little bit in the left field compared to what we think some teams should do. And I think that that's worth checking out, even for the sake of just being contrarian. But make sure to check that out. That's going to drop on Monday. But there's always great content coming out. I mean, looking, for great media members, NBA media members here, and we always try to cycle through it. We're going to have some more guests from a lot of different networks as we go through the next couple of weeks into the NBA Finals, and of course into Corban's favorite time of the year, the NBA off season. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Can't wait to interact with you out there in the Twitter sphere, and we can't wait to see you next week. We do this every Thursday night. We may do it more. Who knows? Just keep it coming. Let us know what you think about it, and we'll see you soon, okay?
You're watching The Swingmen, presented by the 94 Feet